What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we are here with Heavy Temple. It's so great to be able to talk with you all today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's so great to have you here. We're finally getting the debut full-length album, Lupe Amoris, scheduled to come out June 18th. I was really excited to hear more from Heavy Temple after seeing you on the Yob and Bellwitch show, which I can't believe was almost 3 years ago. But you just want to talk about like how the making of this album was in terms of like the songwriting and the recording and all that?
Sure. You know, one of these songs, I think Heavy Temple's been playing for like 6 years. Um, and then some of the others came together after that, and like more recently within the last couple of years. So this record was pretty much ready to go. And it just came down to finding time to record it, which was actually pretty painless because we just been playing these songs for so long, and especially when you have like a lineup change, you have to go through and dial them in again. Um, but we were finally able to get this recorded, and we're kind of shopping it around, and then 2020 happened. Um, but Magnetic Eye reached out to us, so we're just, despite the insanity of the last year and a half, it's just really exciting to finally be able to put this album out because we've been wanting to do that for a while.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely going to be worth the wait for people who haven't heard it yet. Do you think that the first singles that like we've heard throughout the year, "The Maiden" and "A Desert Through the Trees," maybe serves as a good representation of what's in store for the whole album, or is that just one little taste or kind of a one-off sort of thing?
Um, the like the Maiden is sort of like a complementary piece to the song that precedes it, and I think that I like this album together, but I think that it's every song is kind of different. So as long as people are ready to hear kind of like five different vibes under the same heavy tempo umbrella, I mean it's just because the songs have kind of been around for like different lengths of time. Um, I think that it's a good collection of like the last 6 years of what we've been up to. Um, so I'd say they kind of stand out on their own, but they're part of the whole as well. So hopefully people enjoy it.
Do you think that being that you worked on these songs for like a very very long time is what we're going to hear on this album, like how these songs were originally structured and originally arranged, or did these songs change a lot over a span of time?
They're definitely different than when they were first written. Um, I think probably the first and last song on the album are pretty much the same as they were when we wrote them. But we've also been playing them live for like 3 years now, almost with this lineup. Arguably, I think the most cohesive, best sounding lineup. Um, so I would say that now hearing them live, they're going to be a little bit different than they sound on the album. Just because we've been, now playing them for a year and some change in the basement,
Yeah.
not in front of everyone. Um, so, they definitely took a different shape from when they were written to when they were recorded to now when we're presumably going to be going back out and playing shows.
Well, when I saw you play at the Yob and Bellwood show, that's how I discovered Heavy Temple, and I was uh, really transfixed on just your stage presence, and really just like you were able to like hear the bass everywhere you were in that venue. Like I was interviewing Bellwitch right when you took your set, and I got a clear glimpse of it in the microphone there. But like, do you put a similar energy into your live presence as you do when you're songwriting, or do you you mentioned that you change the songs up a little bit, so is it almost kind of like a completely separate art playing live versus songwriting?
That's a good question. Uh, like the writing of like the instrumentation um, is, how do I say? I guess once you've written the song and you're comfortable playing it live, you can be a little bit more loose with your performance. You can take a few more liberties. The songwriting is definitely more structured than it is when we're playing live. Um, and the lyrics are always last because I like to procrastinate. Um, and sometimes I'll write them right before we have to play them for people.
Wow.
um, so in that aspect, the songwriting is a little less structured, but the first three albums, as the primary songwriter, I would usually just like get an idea, and then sometimes it comes to you and you write it out all at once. Sometimes it comes to you in little pieces. But now we've been writing together, which I really enjoy because it takes a little bit of pressure off me, and also like it's nice to hear what the other members are bringing to the table. Um, so I think now that we're writing together, there's a bit more there's a bit more of a process. Whereas before, since it's like I just got like 58 riffs rolling around in my head, and I'm like, how do I put these together? So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to writing more um, with the band.
It's fair to say that maybe playing live is like a lot more liberating because there is kind of like
Mm.
less rules. I'd imagine that the studio or any practice space or any place where you're not playing in front of an audience, there is a little bit. It's a little bit more static and a little bit more structured, and I feel like that the live presence is where you're kind of able to really express who you are as an artist, right?
Yeah, I mean the energy is different too. Playing for someone else and like gauging your crowd's reaction and like seeing them enjoy what you're doing definitely hypes you up more when you're on stage. And I, at least for me, when I'm writing and I'm by myself, there's a bit more like self doubt. Like I think that this is cool and I think people are gonna like it, but you haven't really had a chance to gauge that reaction yet. Um, but yeah, and playing live is always just I think what sets music apart from other art forms is just that it's kind of not it's never the same.
Yeah.
So if you're like looking at a piece of art or you're going to see a play or you're going to see like a classical piece of music been performed, it's generally always going to be the same thing every time. But with music, it's like the energy could be different, or you could play the song faster or slower, or add a solo or whatever. So I like the freedom that you have kind of to not necessarily play what you wanted, you know.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I mean, for me, I don't necessarily want to just, depending on the band, I don't want to just hear the album
Yeah. Absolutely. And
live. I mean,
yeah, do you almost have to like practice crowd interaction though in stage presence, or is that something that just comes naturally as you're playing more and more?
uh, I've definitely had to. There was when we first started, I was just like forgot to even tell people who we were.
Hmm.
Like we would just play and then we would leave, and I was like, shit, I didn't tell anybody like who we are or where we're from, or you know. And I've had like a year and a half at this point to work on some stage banter, and I still don't have anything. It's weird. Like I feel like sometimes I feel awkward. Um, but you're also like making the conscious decision to go play in front of a bunch of people. So I think that's why I speak less and try to like perform more. Um, actions versus words, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh, I try to keep it brief.
Yeah. Well, the Heavy Temple show had like a great flow behind it, so like I was glad to see that nothing really got in the way or like interrupted it. So, um,
Yeah,
I think that's what it is with a Heavy Temple show. It's just you start the engine and you don't stop. And
yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
I just noticed the Weed Eater hat too. By the way, they are awesome, and
Oh, yeah.
I interviewed.
Thank you.
They were the last in person interview I did before the pandemic. So.
That was the last show that I saw, actually.
Oh really?
I think that's where I got this. I think that's where I got this hat.
Oh
Yeah, we had just played. We played like I think the last time we saw them was maybe like at Muddy Roots or something, and yeah, that's probably it. And then they came through Philly like right before everything shut down. So I think that was the last time I saw like a lot of my friends in Philly. I think that was the last time a lot of us saw each other, and definitely one of the last live shows to happen.
yeah, definitely, and it was definitely a good show to go out with a bang before it would stop for a while. I mean, everybody at that show was stoned. Nobody gave a shit about anything. So that was like the last time. It wasn't just like the last live music, but it was like the last time nobody gave a fuck either.
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah, I was thinking about it. I remember like right after the show, and not immediately after, but once they started, closing things down, uh, I was like, man, like I hugged so many people, and like, was I being like irresponsible? But also like nobody really knew yet,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, you're
Um,
excused.
but yeah, yeah. So I was like, ah, shit. I like touched a bunch of my friends. So like, what if we all just get sick now? But thankfully that didn't happen. So
Yeah. And you mentioned Philly too, because I've always loved interviewing bands from not even just Philly, but the state of Pennsylvania in general. Because I've interviewed Rivers of Nile, I've interviewed, a lot of like bands. August Burns Red, for example, are from there, but also like Code Orange is based. They're based out of Pittsburgh, but like, it
uh,
almost seems like that with Philly. It's not like Massachusetts where it's mainly known for metalcore, or New York where it's known for hardcore, or Seattle that's known for grunge. It almost seems like Philly or Pennsylvania in itself just has a very diverse music scene everywhere you go, right?
yeah, and I tell that to people all the time. Like we played with like black metal bands, and we played with more like psych rock ish type bands, and like death metal bands, and like some doom bands, and I mean, the show that we played with Yob, I wouldn't consider us to be, I wouldn't consider us to sound like Yob. I think they're like super fucking heavy. Whereas I feel like we're more of a good time, and like Yob is just a bit more like concentrated. Um, but everybody here is just like everybody goes to everybody's shows and kind of like cross promotes, and um, at least in my experience, everybody's just always been really supportive. Whether you're going to a grind show or you're going to like a dream pop show or whatever,
Yeah.
there's a lot going on.
Yeah, it's Philly seems like to be a really good place. I don't know if the venue's still around, but I was at a show at Boot and Saddle one time, and to see,
Sadly, they closed.
oh, that sucks. They're so
I know.
such a fun venue and such a cool place.
I saw it. I think I saw Elder there.
I saw
Elder was yeah.
oh, you guys with Elder would be a great show. Their last album was epic.
I I would be into it. I just saw their new video. It's fucking sick. I would love to. I would love to play with those guys.
Yeah. And you led me perfectly into the next question actually, because like you've played with like doom metal bands, you played with black metal bands, you've played with a variety of different styles. I could see you do a tour with Baroness, but I could also see you do a tour with like Enslaved or something like that. Like, have you noticed maybe like different types of audiences depending on like the shows that you've played with, or depending on like the bands you've toured with?
For sure. Yeah. And again, that's what's always kind of surprising. Is like when you're playing for an audience that's used to, or like maybe they're kind of like their thing is something heavier, or I don't know, just different than what you're doing. Um, and you had people from like all over the that metal community who seem to like what we're doing. But again, I think that, and I think it's going to happen more now that we're writing together. There's just like a lot of, we all have a lot of influences. Um, I love Tribulation and Above. Our drummer listens to like a lot of black metal and death metal. But I also enjoy some of the softer things. I love Sugarloaf, and then our drummer is really into like the psych stuff. So I think that you know, it's there's kind of something for everyone, but it's effortless to write it that way, which is nice.
Yeah. And do you think that by having this collaborative effort, and I'm probably asking this way too far in advance, but like, do you think that this is going to be a methodology that will influence songwriting in the future? Like, do you think that this new album opened up a lot more doors on what Heavy Temple could do in the future?
Yeah, I mean we've been locked down, and so we have pretty much written an entire album. Still need some lyrics, as I said.
Mhm.
I hate writing those, but yeah. So these songs that I wrote over the last however many years, they really took a different shape when this lineup got together, and the fact that we were able to record with that lineup and then we are still writing with that lineup. This is like it's like a milestone for Heavy Temple. Because somebody will leave to move to a different part of the country, or somebody leaves to go work for NASA, or sometimes you just have different creative goals. But I think we're on the same page now, and I knock on wood, but I'd like to think that moving forward, it'll just be just really fluid, and we can kind of just do whatever we want. Because that's really the main thing with Heavy Temple has always just been like, I just want to write stuff that like makes me feel good.
Mhm.
And if I weren't in this band, like, would I enjoy this album? And that's kind of what, at least for me, that's what I kind of go for. And people seem to enjoy it. So it feels good to know that the things that make you feel good also make other people feel good, and you can write music that other people are into as well.
Absolutely. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for a great discussion.
Sure.
Is there just anything else with Heavy Temple that you would like to promote with the release of the new album, in terms of like shows? Now that shows are starting to happen, knocking on wood, it stays that way. Can you please come to New York City? There's a gig at St. Vitus with your name on it, ready to happen. I just know it.
I would love to do that. St. Vitus is like, it's weird because like I feel, no shade, I feel like St. Vitus like shouldn't be a good venue just because of like the shape of the venue,
Yeah.
but it's also like an awesome venue, and every time we played there, I think like the sound has been great, and like the audience has been great, and we've had a good time. So I'd love to come back. In the meantime, we have a show at the end of July with Ricky the Hatchet, here in just outside of Philly, and then we're playing Muddy Roots in September. But for those of us, for those of you who won't be able to make it to either of those, on I think July 25th, we're doing a playthrough of the album for Jam in the band. They like collaborated with Orange, so a bunch of Orange artists are doing sets for Jam in the band. That's been really cool to watch. So we'll be doing that, and then let's kind of see what shakes out. But we'd like to get back out for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Heavy Temple. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.